Namaste, good morning everyone. Thank you for being here today. And it is a real pleasure to welcome all of you to this special session here at the Adyar Library and Research Center. For those who are new to the space and may not know, this is a library that is no ordinary library. It is a library that was founded in 1886 by Colonel Steele Olcott, one of the founders of the Theosophical Society as well. And it began in the building that is the headquarters as a modest but deeply inspired collection of books. And since then, it has grown into what we see today, one of the world's leading Oriental libraries, the home to over 250,000 printed volumes and approximately 20,000 palm leaf manuscripts drawn from India, Sri Lanka, China, Tibet, and beyond. It is a place where rare and ancient wisdom sits side by side with modern scholarship, where people come from across the globe to sit, to study, to listen, and especially to be transformed. Over the past 2 years, we have been nurturing the Libraries as Communities series here at the Adyar Library and Research Center. And the idea behind this series that was ideated and created by our librarian Jayashri, with of course the help and assistance of the general manager and the administration of Adyar. The idea behind this series is simple yet profound: to deepen our sense of library not just as a repository of books, but as a living, breathing community of readers, researchers, learners, and seekers. A place where ideas are exchanged, connections are made, and new insights can emerge. Part of this initiative involves a theme-based displays of books upstairs, connected especially with a talk that is given here, like the one we are going to witness today. So after the lecture, you can go and directly see, touch, and browse the books that relate to the ideas that were just discussed and presented by the lecturer. We could say that it bridges theory with the material presence and interaction with the books, with the texts, which is something that sometimes is not very common in the libraries. So this is a really golden opportunity. And today we have the honor that having with us here Merike Martsepp, our speaker. She will be presenting about the patterns of life, and it feels like a beautiful circle of life, because less than a month she was here introducing me, so today I have the honor to introduce you. It's a very interesting closing of the cycle. And let me tell you a little bit about Merike. Merike was born and raised in Estonia, and her fascination with spiritual development and human potential began at an early age. This passion eventually led her to join the Theosophical Society in 2015. With an unique background that includes a PhD in physics, where she studied fractals and multifractal patterns, Merike brings a scientific curiosity to her spiritual pursuits. She currently lives and works here at Adyar. She volunteers here at the headquarters, contributing to the School of the Wisdom among many other projects that she is part of. And also her commitment to the next generation of theosophists is particularly evident in her active involvement with the World Federation of Young Theosophists, since 2022. As I was mentioning, her lecture today is entitled Patterns of Life. And I think many of us find it especially resonant, at least I find it very resonant. I am very curious to know what it is about. And okay, what does it mean when we speak of patterns? Patterns in nature, in thought, in spiritual development. How do patterns show up in our lives in ways both obvious or subtle? And I think given Merike's background in physics and her spiritual journey and interest, she's uniquely placed to help us see how pattern is not just a metaphor, but a real structure that may guide us, challenge us, awake something deeper maybe. So without further ado, I invite you all to lean in, look at and listen to whatever Merike has to share today. Please, Merike, welcome.
Hello, you can hear me? Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So, if you look closely at our world, from the smallest bean of the leaf to the largest galaxy cluster, it's fundamentally organized by repeated designs and subtle patterns. Among those, fractal patterns hold a very special place for my heart. They form the core of my 7-year doctoral research, where I investigated them through multifractal analysis applied to material exposed to high temperature plasmas. But because our time is limited today, we won't be diving too much into the deep mathematics. Instead, we will focus on seeing those fascinating patterns in the world around us and explore how they naturally relate to the geometry of dimensions, and maybe if we have a little bit time, touch a little bit how those dimensional concepts also might be understood in the philosophical view. Let's see. So, what is fractal? In short, fractal is a never-ending pattern that is infinitely complex and self-similar across different scales. The term fractal comes from Bernard Mandelbrot. I think it was first used in year 1975, and it's come from Latin word fractus, which means broken or irregular. So one of the key points of fractals is their self-similarity, the most important characteristic, we may say. Meaning that objects look exactly the same or statistically same regardless of how much you zoom in. For example, if you look tree branch, if you break off a tiny twig, that twig looks like a miniature version of the original branch, and that branch looks like the miniature version of the whole tree. The same structure pattern repeats in every level. Also, similarly, things replied for our blood vessels, for the rivers, and even if you look at the close pattern of the leaf. It's all about self-similarity. Now, another important characteristic for fractals is infinite complexity. The true mathematical fractal has details all the way down to infinity. Examples: the Koch snowflake. You start with an equilateral triangle. And on the middle third of each side, you add a smaller triangle, like shown below here. And you repeat this process forever on every new smaller side. And the result is a shape with an infinite perimeter. The perimeter goes longer and longer and longer, but it has finite area. This is a paradox highlight the endless complexity of fractals. Like you see in a step 0, let's say the length of the triangle is 1 meter. In the next step, we add 1/3 of it. So we go on and on until the 1000th step. We have a number that is approximately 8.7 in the power of 124. It's like enormous. So the perimeter of the shape goes infinite, but the area of it stays finite. And here you can see the Helge von Koch, the mathematician who introduced the groundbreaking geometry of the Koch snowflake. He described first it mathematically, and you can see there's a picture of artist version of this snowflake pattern, and on the right side you can see the 3D printed version of the snowflake with some iterations. Now, another very, very important characteristic of fractals is that they have non-integral dimensions. So here you can see that from A we have a point, then B we have a straight line, then C we have a square, then we have a cube, and then we have a tesseract. That is a 4-dimensional cube basically, and we will come back to it later. Those are expressions of mathematical integral dimensions. But we have another dimensions, like for real life objects like the dust particles, like A1 here. They are between 0 and 1. So we have a Cantor fractal. Both have dimensions between 1 and 2. We start also with a single line, and then we go smaller and smaller, like similar to these dust particles in the end. And then we have cofractal, we mentioned before, that is between 1 and 2. It is more than a line, but it is less than an area. And then we have P2, the dimension of Sierpinski triangle fractals. And we have intertwined piping here in C1. It is maybe similar to our intestines. And also we have a Menger sponge in C2 that is between the dimensions 2 and 3, but we will come back to this. So, but I wanted you to have an understanding that we have real life objects are not really integral dimensions. So, little introduction to the Sierpinski triangle, the design rule. Imagine you start with a large solid triangle, and then the rule is very straightforward. You find the middle point of each of the large triangle's 3 sides, and you cut out, connected those midpoints to form a new smaller triangle in the exactly center and remove it. And then you repeat. You are now left with the 3 smaller solid triangles around the edges. You apply the same cut and out the middle rule to each of the new ones, and so on and so on. Now, what makes it fractal? Self-similarity. If you zoom in on any one of these remaining small triangles in like let's say in the 5th step, it looks exactly like the original large triangle. The pattern is repeated in every scale, infinitely detailed. This is another characteristic. You could repeat this process forever, removing smaller and smaller central triangles, meaning the final shapes has details or holes down to infinity. And it goes, the third one is that it goes close to the 0 area. Because if you are constantly removing portions of the area in the center of every triangle, if you could continue this process, let's say forever, the final shape would technically have a perimeter of infinite length, but the area of a 0. So perimeter, because you have to go around each of the ones, but at the same time, the volume of it goes smaller and smaller. So this is ultimate geometric paradox. And in short, it's a triangle that is defined by holes it contains, and those holes follow the same pattern as the hole. This fascinating pattern is first mathematically described by Sierpinski, Vaclav Sierpinski, and but however, he's from the last century, a person. But however, you can see in the left, this self-similar geometry is not very new. Already about 900 years earlier, you can see some fractal patterns used in some mosaics in the Santa Maria Trastevere church in these historic floors, and also the buildings of Vatican, and within detailed designs in a Sistine Chapel floor. So although we are talking about fractals only like in last 50 years, actually the patterns itself are like much older. We just now use this word to describe those patterns. The next one I would like to little bit to describe, so you get a better understanding what a fractal is measure sponge. So imagine you start with a simple solid cube. The rule of the measure sponge is applied at the cube and then to every smaller cube that remains. So first of all, divide. Slice the cube into 27 smaller equal cubes. So every side is 3 by 3 by 3, like a Rubik cubic. Remove now the centers of all those 27 cubes. So first one is the very middle center. And after that, 6 cubes in the center of each face. You have front face, you have back face, you have top, bottom, left, right. So out of those 27 cubes, you remove 7 cubes, and you're left with the 20 smaller cubes. And now you repeat the same thing for all those 20 smaller cubes. You divide them for 3, or basically 27, and you remove each of one of those, the middle centers. Just like Sierpinski triangle, the repeated removal of the central material creates an incredible geometrical paradox. It has infinite porosity. With every step, you are pouring more and more holes into the structure. If you could continue forever, the resulting object would have an infinite number of the holes and an infinite surface area. It's rough and outside and rough on the inside, but 0 volume. The volume goes less and less and less. Since you are constantly removing volume, the actual solid material that remains would approach to 0 volume, even though it is still occupies space. So if you go for let's say 100 or 1,000 different steps, you will have like a cluster of small particles like dust or molecules left. And in these simple terms, the measure sponge is a cube that is mostly empty space, yet still remains the fundamental complex structure of the three-dimensional object. And here you can see Carl Menger himself, and also artists have created in a art piece with the first, like the 0 step, and then first 3 steps. And on top you can see a picture where university students are making model of it to better understand this complexity. Now, how to construct hypercube? The construction of high-dimensional shapes like hypercubes follows a simple repeating rule of parallel extension. Like here you can see, a shape of dimension n is created by connecting two identical shapes that with a parallel way. That is one dimension smaller. So we got a line. If we connect 2 points, point is a 0 dimension, line is a 1 dimension. So if you have now those two lines and you parallelly, like under 90 degrees, connect those two lines, you will get a plane or a square. If you had two squares in a similar way in a parallel, you will get cube. And now, if you repeat it, if you connect two 3D cubes in a parallel way, you will get 4D cube that is called tesseract. It is really a bit difficult to imagine how this will look like. How can we, in a fourth way, add it in a parallel way? So let me a little bit describe it. This is a concept of tesseract. The tesseract is what happens when you try to build a cube, but you add a fourth dimension of space. You have length, you have width, you have depth, and then you have ana, or sometimes it's called kata. This is the fourth spatial axis. And you have the same analogy of progression like we see in the previous slide. And what it looks like, we can see the shadow of it. This moving video clip here on the right is actually a shadow. It's not the real thing because we are not able to see it in a four-dimensional way. When you see a picture of tesseract, you are usually looking 3D projection. It's like a shadow of the 4D object. Like if we are looking a shadow of 3D object, we see it in a plane. So the same way, if you look at a 4D object shadow, we see something that is 3D. The most common drawing looks like two cubes, one inside of the other, like you can see in the left up, with all their corresponding corners connected. And just 2-3 drawing of a cube looks cute. If you are drawing a cube in a paper, then we are not able to show all the angles like they really are. We can see that some angles are not 90 degrees, although they actually are. So the same way here, we can see on this upper diagram that not all the lines are to each other with 90 degrees, but actually they are. And the key features for a 4D person would look at tesseract, they would see that it has 16 points. It will have 32 edges, 24 faces, and 8 cells or cubes. And here in the center you can see if we make a cube fold in the plane, then this is how it looks. And at the same time, if we take a tesseract and put it in a 3D space, it will contains 1, 2, 8 different cubes. And then we fold it together, and then you can see the middle yellow cube and the blue cube are the ones that are going to like eat each other. But we only see it happening, actually they are at the same time in 90 degrees from each other. Ultimately, the tesseract is a powerful conceptual tool. It helps to understand the principles of higher dimensional geometry using the simple familiar blueprint of the cube. And this is one of my very favorite tesseract. It is artist vision of tesseract that is filled inside. Before we were looking only the outlines of a cube. Now, if if it will be a 4D cube, then it will be like this but again, this is a shadow of it. But it will be inside out or revealing. Now, a little bit back to the fractals. We have two kinds of fractals. We have classical determined fractals. These are the beautiful clean fractals we were looking before. Now, how they work? You have a fixed rule, like you cut out the middle third or so on, and this rule is applied exactly the same way in every stage. Result, we got a pattern that is perfectly predictable and looks identical at every scale. Like, for example, the Koch snowflake. It is best for illustrating a concept of this infinite complexity and non-integral dimensions. But at the same time, in the real world, we have statistical fractals. How they work? Well, the pattern doesn't repeat exactly. Instead, it has a statistical probability, like the roughness of the distribution of valleys and peaks, remain the same across the scales. You might have a rule like the mountain range must be rougher than the perfectly smooth plain, and that roughness must remain consistent whether you view it from 100 miles or from 1 mile. What is the result? The result is that the pattern is statistically self-similar. Like if you are looking at the trees, there's some kind of probability that the next branch is in some angle, and the smaller branches is something and some other angle, and so on. Or if you look at a small section of a coastline, generally it looks like the whole coastline, but the details of every little inlet are unique and random. So this means statistical. It is best for modeling natural phenomena like fluid turbulence, like cloud formations, the irregular movement of the internet traffic, financial markets, and so on. In short, classical fractals are ideal models that never truly exist, but statistical fractals are the messy, efficient, and chaotic structures found everywhere in this world and nature. Oh, and here you can see some examples of them. In the very left, you have a tree branch. If you zoom in, you have a similar pattern. If you zoom in even more, you have, again, a little bit similar, but already the details are a little bit different. At the same time, in the middle, you have mathematically created branch, and if you zoom in, you have the same branch, and if you zoom in, you will still have the same branch. So this is mathematical, the other one is the actual statistical one. And here you can see some ice flowers on a glass that are also example of statistical fractals. So we can see some of the interesting, there's a page in Wikipedia where you can see different dimensions that have been calculated. One of the is mostly used is Hausdorff dimension, but other than Hausdorff, there are many different ways how to calculate fractals. It depends on the structure or the process that you are measuring, which method is like best to use. But here they have used the Hausdorff dimensions, and they say that the coastline is a one dimension, but coastline is so rough that the dimension is 1.22. And here you can see human brain surface. Surface is something that is two-dimensional, but human brain surface is about 2.8. And also our lungs have so many, so complicated structure that it is 2.98 is the surface. So it's very similar to the tree as a volume, because it's so filled up. And we have the distribution of the galaxy clusters, which is over 2. Now, what does it mean that the dimension is over 2? Now, Hausdorff's dimension measures how efficiently a set of points fills the space that it occupies. So, if the dimension of the galaxy cluster were exactly 2, it would mean that the galaxies are laid out in a thin, flat sheet, like a paint in the canvas. But if the dimension were 3, it would mean that the galaxies are uniformly scattered everywhere, completely filling all the volume of the space. So, but because this dimension is greater than 2, it means that galaxy clusters are clumped and structured. The galaxy clusters are not distributed like a smooth sheet of paint, but they are clumpy, there are voids, they don't fill all the space, and they do not fill the universe uniformly, like for in the case of 3D. Also, I think it's important to mention about multifractals. So, basically, multifractals are many fractals in one. What is the problem? Why we can't use just fractals? So, think about statistical fractal. Let's take a cloud. If you measure its roughness, the fractal dimensions, we can say it's a roughness. You get number, let's say 2.5. It's less than 3 because it is so empty compared to thing that is totally filled, the space. So this number implies that the roughness is that this roughness would be same everywhere in the cloud, but this is not true. In edges it is whimsy and irregular, but in the center it is more dense and smooth. So the fractal dimension can't describe both the edge and the center with the same number. If we zoom in the center, we got one kind of results, but if we zoom in the edge, we got different kind of numbers. So instead of that, we can use multifractals. Multifractals solve this by recognizing that the single complex object or process is actually composed by many different fractal sets, all nested together. Instead of having just one fractal dimension, it has a spectrum of dimensions. Each dimension is a spectrum, describes a different intensity or concentration level within the object that we are measuring. To put simply, the multifractal is a complex object where a roughness, density, and intensity of the pattern changes from point to point. That changes its roughness itself follows as a fractal pattern. Now, why would we use it? Because many objects in a real world, we have these places where we have like a hotspot, where we have a concentration of material, and then we have, let's say, quiet areas where we have a very less material. And to be able to describe and understand them mathematically, it is good to use multifractals. And also here up is a one image from my research and I just wanted to show that I also used multifractals to investigate it. So about multifractals, we have different models that capture complex, often nonlinear behavior that have been successfully proposed to implement across the many areas, such like in a diverse range of scientific and technological domains. For fluid dynamics, these are often used to predict erratic, unpredictable motion of turbulence. Here for the planes you can see that it goes and then the ear and clouds behind it have some turbulence that will be created, such as stimulating how vortexes from behind an irreparable wing or within ocean currents, you can see below. In the digital realm, they are essential for modeling prosty and uneven internet traffic flow to optimize network capacity. Here in the picture you can see some network capacity. While the finance models as CARCH are applied to track, forecast, volatility clusters and stock market time series, the principles extend to the physical world. Geophysics model analyze seismic activity and earthquake dynamics, so they can predict better when it's the time to move and potentially save some lives. They are used to meteorology to improve the long-range weather forecasting and in analyzing solar magnetic field time series to better predict space weather events that can impact satellites. For example, every 11 years, Sun has it has like a more flames, but they have a intensified period, about 1 year, where they have a lot of outbursts. And that time we might see the aurora borealis in the places that we usually cannot see them because it's just there's so much of it. It's a little bit also dangerous because if we have the protective atmosphere and if the solar comes, then we can get some sunburns and some other difficulties. But it's good to know about it and also to predict it. And furthermore, these techniques are employed in subtle biological and artistic contexts, such analyzing irregular yet pattern rhythms of the heart rate dynamics for a medical diagnosis. I was seeing one of the where they look at the heart rate of a person who is sick and who is not, and if you can see there are different, the maximums are in different places, and then if you look a person that you do not know, you can predict, you can look similar to what this picture is. Is it similar to those who are healthy or the one that is unhealthy? And also generating realistic texture synthesis and image models in computer graphics. Nowadays it's used a lot for that. And understanding the unpredictable fluctuation in natural light intensity time series, crucial to designing modern solar power systems. And modern system solar panel is moving towards the sun to capture the maximum of the solar power, for example. The common thread is the power of these models to find structure within seemingly chaotic data. So it's really complicated to calculate. Ask now.
Your previous slide, the simple multifractal can it be likened to light through a prism and light coming out through a prism? Does that also have multifractal patterns or no?
I feel we have to see which fractal we are using. I am talking right now generally, but there's so many different methods to use. I have to think which method to use it, but my intuition would say that it is rather multifractal, but I have to come back to it to think about it. Thank you. Now, to say that human is a fractal means that we are built on a beautiful repeating design principle. Look inside and you'll see complex blueprints used again and again, from the way our lung branch into tiny ear sacs and our blood vessels fork out in the capillaries to the very structure that gives our bones a strength. This miniature design isn't random. It's nature's way optimizing function. More abstractly, this pattern of nesting complexity is also reflected in our thoughts, in our personal identity, and the structure of our interconnected communities. This universal design principle is nature's way of maximizing function. So we have also some investigation from China and France about like a psychological behavior of people, and some you can look at them as like a time series and then calculate some fractals out of it and have some predictions. So also we can look our thoughts and our like personal characteristics as like fractal patterns and think about it. But since our time is getting close, I would just give you some suggestions for the readings. This first is a fractal geometry of nature by Mandelbrot. The book was, I think, written first in 1982, and basically it fundamentally changed how scientists look complexity in nature. It was all about those fractals that I described you, and a little bit less. And the next one in 1986 was a book, The Beauty of Fractals by Bethgen and Richter. And it primarily uses these gorgeous full color computer generated images to demonstrate how simple mathematical formulas can create infinitely complex and beautiful patterns. And it is an exploration of the mathematical origin and aesthetic appeal of these complex dynamical systems. Now we have this wonderful book, Fabric of the Universe by Postel. This explores the connection between human consciousness, esoteric traditions, and modern science. Now, all those books are, you have to read them with open mind. If you see something that seems reasonable, then take it. If you're not, then you can leave it. But I think, at the very least, it widens your horizon of seeing things. This book attempts to unify the objective world of science, like quantum physics, with the subjective inner world of spiritual thought, which suggests that the reality is a single interconnected system and that our perception and awareness play a vital role in shaping our experience in the universe. It's a key work in the early popularizing, integrating mystical and scientific worldviews. And the next book, The Tao of Physics, is a legendary book by Chopra. Yeah? His cells, yes. And also, I think in YouTube you have videos about it, a very, very nice one. And Chopra explores the profound parallels between modern physics, quantum theory, and relativity with an ancient Eastern mysticism like Taoism and Hinduism. And Chopra argues that both paths lead to the same fundamental understanding that the universe is not made of a separate solid things, but is a single, unified, and dynamic web of relationships. I will say it again, that the universe is a single, unified, and dynamic web of relationships. And the book shows how scientific discoveries reflect the ancient spiritual concepts of oneness and the interconnected nature of reality and consciousness. Then we have this book, Maya and Physics by Pandan. It was published in 1991. It's a profound work focused on creating a synthesis between modern physics and ancient Indian philosophy of Advaita Vedanta. The central aim of this is to see the discoveries like classical physics, relativity, and quantum mechanics with a Vedantic concepts of Brahman, the ultimate non-dual reality, and Maya, the cosmic illusion of power that makes the non-dual reality appear as diverse material universe. And in essence, we can say that Maya in physics is detailed scholarly attempt to demonstrate that science and spirituality are not contradictory, but rather two converging paths leading to the same truth about the ultimate nature of our cosmos. And then we have the physics of karma, the Requiem to Time by Mr. Reddy. And this is a spiritual and philosophical treatise that attempts to bring scientific rational approach to the traditional concept of karma. This is very much important in theosophical teachings. The author, a scientist by training and a devoted spiritual seeker, uses contemporary terminology and scientific metaphors to explore profound ideas about life, death, and existence. And essentially, it's a book that blends concepts from physics, the philosophy of Upanishad, and the teachings of spiritual masters like Ramana Maharishi, all in the search of the cure of human existence. Then we have this wonderful book, The Geometry of Space Consciousness by James Perkins. And it is a book of theosophy and spiritual philosophy. It argues that physical place is just a visible form of a deeper inner place, what we can also call it consciousness. It uses geometry and visual patterns to map our movements and levels of human consciousness. And basically the goal is to provide a manual for creative self-discovery and realizing one's spiritual self by understanding the geometric organization of the mind. We can say it is a metaphysical text that uses geometric concept to explore spiritual awakening. And then we have The Reality and Empathy by Alex Comfort. And this is a philosophical book that attempts to update our worldview by integrating the implications of modern physics with the nature of the mind and consciousness. And Comfort contends that our everyday view of objective reality is outdated, and we must replace by a model that acknowledges how the observer, that we can also call the empathy, influences what is observed. By that, it's bridging the science, philosophy, and psychology together. Now we have this book, The Physics of the Secret Doctrine. This is a newcomer. Also, if we read the Secret Doctrine, there are several places where it talks about the space, the dimensions. It also says how space have endless dimensions, and it basically depends on the level of the consciousness, how many we are able to perceive. And William Kingsland is demonstrate how the scientific validity and hidden meaning in this secret doctrine takes place. And it analyzes the philosophical concept of cosmology, the ultimate nature of matter, the laws of physics, and the origin of the universe, seeking to reconcile these ancient wisdom teachings with the scientific understanding that we have. And essentially it argues that the esoteric record anticipates and aligns with the modern scientific discovery. And then we have Science and Occultism by Taimni. It is also a work of theosophical philosophy that attempts to harmonize principles of occultism and the findings of modern science. And Taimni himself is a chemist, and he wrote about the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali and tackles subtle conflict between religious revelations and speculative philosophy. and scientific inquiry. I have not read this particular one, but I very much like the way he wrote. Like in his text, there's not a single word that you can take out, because everything serves a purpose. He doesn't repeat much, he explains very, very nicely. You can feel this scientific background there. And in essence, Taimi uses the language of the science to explore the esoteric doctrines, positioning occultism not as a replacement of science, but as a framework. Occultism is a framework that provides a complete, unified understanding of man, God, and the whole universe. Then we have the Occult Chemistry by Annie Besant and Charles Webster Leapeter, and where they have clairvoyantly investigated before the science has reached there some of the atoms. They say by clairvoyant microscopy they are able to zoom up to 16 million times, and then they describe it, and it's a really interesting work, those who are interested. And next to it, the studies in occult chemistry and physics by Schutolliv is basically a commentary for the first one. And then we have 4 books, I mean there are probably more, but about dimensions. Charles Howard Hinton has a book, 4 Dimensions. It is a fundamental text in the history of a higher dimensional thought. It is not modern work of physics like a string theory, nor is it a religious text. It is a classical work of conceptual mathematics and philosophy. And it is dedicating to helping the reader to visualize geometry of a 4th spatial dimensions. I read it and I try to translate it, and I very much he says it's good to meditate on this 4th dimension, and it helps you to, if you hold in mind how it is to imagine this 4th dimensional object that has this 4th direction that is also in right angle to the other directions, and if you try to hold it in mind, it is like quite impossible at the first, but if you keep trying to do it, he says it makes you evolve something in you. So I only said maybe it's worth trying out. And then we have the book Theosophy and the 4th Dimension by Alexander Horn, and it's already published in 1928, and it's a work that attempts to bridge the conceptual gap between mathematical idea of this higher space and then theosophical teachings. And then we have the book of also Horn mentions that geometrical concept of the 4th dimension provide a crucial key for understanding the human consciousness and invisible spiritual planes described in our teachings. So, and the next book that is also written by Horne, but it is co-authored by Geoffrey Hudson, who is a theosophist and claimed clairvoyant. And this book is called Some Experiments in the 4th Dimensional Vision. And in essence, this book is a detailed record of real-time clairvoyant experiments where they conducted some and how they did it and what time, and everything is nicely put there. They have some experiments that were successful, some were a little bit less successful, and some had the results that did not totally understand, but it's an interesting book. And in the 5th we have also a book about 5th dimensions where this lady Adyar argues that humanity is heading to the fifth dimension in the end. But before we end, I would like to read you some ideas from this, some experiments in four-dimensional vision. So, imagine trying to hide something from a 3D person by putting it a closed box. You have a box, you put something inside that you cannot see. So, if you had a 4-3 vision of the box, barriers would be meaningless. Because the inside turns outside and you're able to see it at the same time. So the box barriers would be meaningless as you could look around or through the barrier by seeing its four-dimensional structure. Now Hodgson and Horn argue that the physical world is just a slice of a larger four-dimensional reality, and Hodgson's vision allows him to see the whole 4D object, including its interior, simultaneously. So one of the experiments, they had a cube that on the back of it there was number 13 written, and Hodgson can only see the front of it. And then one by one he describes how he sees different layers, how he went inside the box, how he then evenly see all the planes, and how he was doing looking at it in different levels. And again, it's an interesting, we should take it with an open mind, and but I think it is, I personally like the idea that there are more to this world that we cannot describe with this three-dimensional worldview, and the fourth dimension will be like a one way how to explain those things. So, but since our time is up, thank you very much. And if you're interested in any of this book I mentioned before, please feel free to visit our library's exclusive exhibition. Thank you.
Well, on behalf of the Adyar Library and I guess of all of us, I thanks Merike. Thank you very much for this comprehensive talk and with your passion and wide knowledge of the subject, triggering in us, I guess, for each one of us a different kind of interest, a different kind of insight. But there were certain things that really spoke to me, and I mean, the practical applications of the fractal field are amazing in the meteorology, in other fields that you mentioned, but also this thing of the self-similarity and these patterns that repeat themselves in nature, in cosmos, making me think of the Hermetic axiom that as above, so below, and how we are the cosmos is us. I mean, this is really inspiring in how through this subject of the fractals that we can go inside that. And also what you were mentioning at the end, I was, when you show us the Tesseract, I was trying really hard to imagine it and to picture it, and then I was thinking, really, if we meditate upon it, we can develop higher, we can reach higher planes, such as develop the intuition. And then when you mentioned this book of Horn, actually it came to the reality that actually we can, by meditating on it, develop this kind of things. And when you were mentioning the experiments with the box, that if we had that possibility, we can look at the box without the barriers. It gives me this sensation that really there is more to the eyes that we can see, and that when we meditate any topic of this kind of deepness, with seriousness and with connection, we really can make these barriers that separate us vanish and integrate. So really it was very, very nice, and thank you. And on behalf of the Adyar Library and we want to give this token of appreciation that we got you.